Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Todd Klindt's SharePoint Netcast number 184, recorded live on Monday, January 13th, 2014, the very first Netcast of 2014. Right here, you didn't miss it. If you're in the chat room right now, you got it. If you're downloading it, you have downloaded all of the Netcasts for 2014 already in one fell swoop. I am your host and the next American Idol, Todd Klindt, and all of this, this whole year, all the Netcasts would not be possible without the fine folks at Rackspace. You can go to SharePoint.Rackspace.com, find out all about the great SharePoint things we have, our SharePoint hosting options, and we have several our SharePoint services, the things we can do for you, and we can do that for you if you're hosting with us or if you're hosting with somebody else. We've got SharePoint training up there. I do this little weekly get-together, me and 20 some of my closest friends, the Netcast hooligans get together and record it for the rest of your guys' benefit. Laura Rogers does a SharePoint Power Hour thing on Wednesdays during the day. She gets to take off work when she does hers. I got to get me some of that. But we got all that stuff there, and that's all up at SharePoint.Rackspace.com. We write little white paper things and put up there. We add content all the time. So if you have any itching questions, desires about SharePoint at Rackspace, by all means, go over there and take a look at that. Tell them Todd sent you. I get $1 every. No, that's not true. I don't get anything. I have to keep my job. I get to keep my flag, keep my monitor, and all that. But that's SharePoint.Rackspace.com. So and so there is a Rackspace YouTube channel, and I think all of Laura's stuff is on there. And that's a good, Mark in the chat room mentioned that. That is a good thing. You can get this particular piece of art, this fine production that sits in front of you. You can go to toddklint.com/blog, and I blog all of my netcasts. You can go to toddklint.com/netcast to get in on the live fun, though I need to change that page and put the old ones there too and stuff like that. You can also go to youtube.com/ToddKlintNetcast, and if that's how you like to consume stuff on YouTube, it's there. If you go into iTunes and look for my name, you'll get the audio feed in there, or the Xbox podcast thingamadoodle jigger, whatever. Search for my name and you can get the audio versions there too. So lots of different ways to get it. And then the Rackspace stuff is also on YouTube. Laura's got a channel. Rackspace has a channel. All kinds of good stuff. So lots of ways to consume the content. Kind of my idea is that it is my goal to make this as easy to consume as possible. There's not much I can do about the content, not much I can do about the presenter, but what I can do is get that out on YouTube and all those other places. So, and at Rackspace we've tried to do that. Speaking of production, there was no Netcast last week. 183 was back in December. Last week, during this exact time, I was on an airplane and getting ready to land, but it was on an airplane just the same, and so I wasn't able to record one. And we'll talk a little bit more. You guys in the chat room remind me about the airport. Got a great story about that, about coming home last Monday night, but there was not one last week. You guys got the week off. That is my New Year's present to you guys. So the topics this week are Doug in the chat room is asking if I landed at the right airport. Sort of did. Didn't do the whole Branson gag that the Southwest has been doing, but sort of. So the topics tonight going to be kind of light on SharePoint stuff because with the holidays and me being gone, there just hasn't been a lot of work things. But I got plenty of good stuff. Don't shut it down now. Don't tune it out now. I promise it'll be good. The first thing last week, what I was gone for NMX, and that is the New Media Expo. And I think if you go to nmxlive.com, that's the official website for that. This is the second year that I've gone to it, and the whole reason that I went there is because of you guys. A year and a half ago, when they had took applications for the podcasting awards, a couple of folks that normally sit in the chat room here nominated my podcast for one of the podcast awards. Now, it didn't make it past the first stage because honestly, this thing's not all that great. But it got me aware of the whole NMX thing. It used to be called Blog World, and then they kind of expanded it out to handle all sorts of new media, blogs and podcasts and all sorts of stuff. So that was kind of how I got hooked up with NMX last year, and had a good enough time, met some good people, got some great ideas, that I went back again this year and drug along Justin King, our marketing guy, because he needs these ideas. Got to keep those creative juices flowing. He's a good guy, but at some point he could run out. So I drug him along, told him how good it was, and so he did that. And the other thing that is good about that, though not good, sort of, it's tough, is it's good for me to get outside my comfort zone. I go to however many, 10 SharePoint conferences a year, and it's the same people that I know, and it's very comfortable. And so going to this New Media Expo is almost nobody that I know. We'll talk about that in a bit, but it's a topic that is I know a little bit about, but not a lot about. And the people that are at the New Media Expo are not nerds, not tech folks. A lot of them are not tech folks. They are content producers. They're not people like me that keep doing, that do this kind of stuff, but they're, fitness bloggers and parenting bloggers and food bloggers, cooking bloggers, that kind of stuff, music bloggers. And so it's good for me to not hang out with people like you guys all the time. So that was good to get there and see those folks and see what other people are doing, because I kind of get in my little silo here and all that. So it was good to get outside and see some of that stuff. Mainly the sessions that I went to were video-based, podcasting-based. I found that with that crowd, with the video stuff, I'm sort of an anomaly, but with the blogging stuff, I'm very much an anomaly, because the bloggers that go to something like New Media Expo that pay the however much it was to get in there, I don't remember, $600, $1,000, whatever, they are trying to monetize on their blogs. Whereas I've got a sugar daddy, these guys, so I don't have to worry about that. So there's, I don't want to say, it's just different. So the way that they approach blogging and all that is just different. There were a lot of sessions on how to make money, how to monetize this, how to monetize that. None of that was really germane to me, because I don't have to worry about that. Rackspace takes care of all that. So because of that, I went to mostly video and audio type sessions to kind of get some ideas on how to fix this poor shambles of a podcast. So the first one, well, I guess I went to a few, but one of them that I went to was all about audio, nothing but audio. And that was really good, though again, their focus was a little different. Their focus was on not podcasting so much as like fiction. So imagine it being like audiobooks, but the person you're going to is actually writing it. So they record like serial audio, like old radio things or something like that. So their environments were a little different than mine, but there was still some good stuff in there. Like one of the things they were talking about is when they were recording sections, they had a little children's tent, like my daughters have a Dora tent that's that way, and they recorded inside of that, and they showed, try to keep outside noise out and stuff like that. Obviously, I can't get away with that in here. You guys probably think I'm weird enough as it is without me sitting inside of a Dora tent and recording my podcast. But there were some other good ideas. So one of the things, the audio for this podcast has improved dramatically from a couple of years ago. The Yeti mic that I'm using now is pretty good. I've got things settled down. My hardware problems are mostly gone. And so that was good, but there are a few things that I can fix. Like one of them is we get a little bit of echo, and we get echo for a couple of reasons. Number one, 18 inches from my voice is the monitors, is where all my notes are at, where the chat room's at, things like that. And so my voice is bouncing off that and bouncing back to the microphone. The other problem is I've got very smooth walls on both sides, and so my voice is bouncing around the room, which is causing a little bit of reverb and not the good kind. So I got some tips on how to reduce that. One thing that was interesting was that there was so this was one of the things about NMX, and I'll talk about this at the end here. This was a panel of 3 people that was talking about this, and they unanimously agreed that audio quality wasn't that important. They all unanimously agreed that if the content was good enough, that people would suffer through substandard audio. And I just absolutely could not disagree more. Maybe that's because my content's not very good, and theirs is. But I have found that, I guess, and this comes from something that I learned last year at NMX, or maybe it was one of Scott Hanselman's podcasts. I can't remember. But I feel exactly the opposite. I feel that nothing is more important than audio. That the audio quality, because I've had some netcasts that were just horrible when it comes to the audio quality, and you can't get through it. If there's a buzzing in the background or if it sounds tinny, man, it doesn't matter what they're talking about. If you just can't stand it, if the sound just grates on you, you tune out, you stop it. And so when they said, buy these cheap mics, whatever, it's okay. As long as your content's good, people listen. I don't agree. And that is one of the things that I have focused on, is trying to get the audio better. We're looking good, getting better. Mark Chrisman posted a thing in the chat room. Right now I can't browse the web, Mark. I got this thing going on, but so that's kind of what they're talking about. But I'll probably experiment a little bit with that, getting some foam stoppers, things like that. Maybe try to get something between my microphone and the monitors so that things don't bounce around quite as well. So yeah, some of those acoustic panels like that. But that was one of the things. The other thing that was interesting is they were talking about different kinds of microphones, and two of the guys, they record a book together, I guess. I don't know how it all works, but they record their thing together. And they said when they started, they didn't have any kind of budget, and so what they used was some karaoke mic set that one of their kids had with the PS3. So it was like a little USB dongle, which I assume is, well, I had one in here. No, I guess I don't. A little USB audio card, and it had a little mic. It was like 2 mics, and they just used that, and that's how they recorded the first few. And I thought, that's not a horrible idea. When I go on the road and Shane and I do these, I only have the one mic, and we end up getting real close when we talk, and Shane gets the wrong idea. And then after the netcast, I got to sit down and explain it all to him again, how, I'm married and I'm just friends and all that kind of stuff. So I thought about, getting those little USB PS3 mics and trying that. That was they're cheap online, $30-$40, something like that. So I might try that. But that was good, just hearing them talk about the different audio things, and it was good that when they talked about mastering software and rendering software, the big one that they all talked about was Audacity, and that was the one that I used to use with this. When I was recording the audio separately, I used Audacity, and for the most part, they couldn't come up with anything better. If you haven't used Audacity, it's a free audio editing and recording program, and it's good for voice, it's good for recording and then editing and snipping things out, and it's got effects. It's also good for instruments. It's got a bunch of instrument effects. I've got a guitar and I've hooked up to Audacity and played some stuff, and you can do some things with that too. So if you're looking at starting any of this kind of thing, kind of the thing they wanted you to get out of this was any decent mic will be okay, even if it's from your kid's karaoke machine. And if you're running Windows or Mac, software is not an issue. You can use Audacity and do everything. So that was good. There was a few good things that I got out of that. Another session that I went to was all about video, and that's kind of something I keep meaning to do more with, but I haven't done yet. But I did get some good ideas from that one about lighting and backgrounds and things like that. Right now, the lighting for this is horrible, but you guys already knew that. I'm preaching to the choir. I'm just sitting in my office, and I've got 4 CFL, compact fluorescent lights, in the corners that are just doing it. So it's really bright here. There's none coming from the sides. There's none coming from the back. So they gave me some great ideas. And also, one of the things that they've mentioned is that these LED panel lights have gotten really cheap, and they've just, as the years have gone by, they've gotten cheaper and cheaper. And so I'll probably buy a couple of those and just play with that a little bit and see if we can get better lighting. Lord knows I need all the help I can get when it comes to making all this look better. So that was good. And one of the things that was in there was the guy that was talking about the video was also, he did a little bit about mics. And again, his context was like training videos and then like weddings, things like that. So doing weddings, recording, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of things that weren't completely applicable to this. But one of the things that he did reminded me of a video that SharePoint Jack did. He sent me a link on YouTube. I don't know if he published that out or whatever, but he was reviewing several lavalier mics. And what this guy was talking about, and something that Jack covered in his video, was the noise that the mic gives you. So like when the wire bumps against your shirt and things like that, that's something you should test when you're looking at lavs. And he gave some ideas on how to, prevent some of that stuff. So that was very helpful, and it made me feel good that he was giving some of the same advice that Jack did in his microphone reviews. So I used to record this with a lavalier mic, and it was a really cruddy lavalier mic. I think it was $11 5 years ago on Amazon, and I'm kind of glad I don't use that anymore. It was kind of ugly. But this guy, he had like $300 and $400 lavalier mics that he was using, and so he got a little better quality than I did. So there was. So besides the sessions, I went to a few sessions, not just those, but I also went to some keynotes, and there were some really interesting, great keynotes. One of the first ones that I went to was one that Penn Jillette did. And Penn Jillette, if you guys are not familiar with him, he's more than half, of Penn and Teller, the magician team. And the reason that he was there was because he is crowdsourcing a movie. And so this was kind of an idea on how to let the new media folks, the folks in the audience here, get ideas on how to fund things and how to do bigger and better things. So if you're going to watch his movie, Director's Cut, you're going to have to bleep out for the next few minutes because I'm going to give spoilers away, not a lot, but the way that he is doing his thing is amazing. And I guess one thing that I want to say about Penn Jillette is, like 10 years ago when my wife and I, 13 years ago at this point, when my wife and I went to Vegas for the first time, we had to see Penn and Teller because they were playing at the Rio. They're still playing there now. And one of the things that I was struck by back then, and you got to think, this was in August of 2000. This was before Twitter, before Facebook, and all this social media stuff. We went to the Penn and Teller show, and after the show, Penn and Teller stood outside and talked to every single person, and they didn't leave until everybody was there, till every picture had been taken, till every autograph had been signed, every question had been answered. Teller talks in person. He doesn't talk on stage, he doesn't talk on TV, but he talks in person, and that was great. So that just kind of tells you what kind of person Penn is. What was before all that stuff was important, before people on social media could say, tried to meet Penn Jillette, he was a real jerk. This was just how he was. So, and of course, I'm like everybody else, I'm a big fan of Penn Jillette, so I got my picture taken with him, and he's 7 feet tall and all that kind of stuff. So he was out there, and he was talking about this new movie that he's doing called Director's Cut, and the reason that was applicable to the New Media Expo was that he crowdsourced it all. He used a site called Fund Anything, and they funded the movie that way. And that was really interesting. So and brilliant. I mean, anybody who's listened to any Penn Jillette stuff, whether you agree with the guy or not, he is very smart, very articulate. And one of the things that he said was that, somebody came up and said, hey, my mom always told me never to talk about politics, never talk about religion. You talk about politics and religion all the time. Have you ever thought maybe you shouldn't do that? And his response was no, because politics and religion are both very important topics, and there's no better way to find out you're wrong than to talk about them out loud. And so that I just thought that was awesome, that he didn't speak publicly about politics and religion to change people's minds. He spoke out loud about politics and religion to find out where he was wrong about politics and religion. I thought that was really great. But so he was doing this movie called Director's Cut, and incredibly smart, incredibly well thought out. So the idea behind Director's Cut is that you're watching a movie, and it's got the director's audio in the background describing the movie and going on. But then after you get into the movie, you realize that it's not the director that's doing the director's cut. You find out that it's actually this crazy guy who has kidnapped an actress and has stolen a bunch of footage from the movie and has recut the movie himself, and he's the one doing the narration. And Penn plays this crazy guy. But what really makes this crazy meta is that he crowdsourced this movie on Fund Anything. And in the movie, he writes that in. So the movie inside of the movie is also crowdsourced. And the crazy guy that gets access to the actors and gets access to the footage and all that helped fund the movie. And one of his perks, because he donated so much, was that he gets on the set, which is crazy smart to circle that around. And the other thing was, if you for the real movie, if you donated a certain amount of money, you got to say a line on scene. And so those people were people who had funded the movie inside of the movie and were saying lines on screen. I mean, it's just crazy smart the way he wrapped all that around. But he was just talking about how anybody can do this. He did it because, you know, he's got some notoriety. But if you've got a big project, you can do this crowdsourcing. You can go to pledge.com if you're a musician, or fund anything, or, you know, all the Kickstarter, all these kind of places. So it was really interesting watching him, and he's just really smart, really friendly. So that particular keynote was good. Another keynote that I went to was a guy that I had never heard of before named Scott Stratton. And the guy that runs NMX had said he had met Scott Stratton several years earlier, and Scott came up to him and said, "Hi, I'm Scott Stratton, and I'm going to do the keynote at NMX sometime." And this guy said, "Really? You don't say." And, well, here it was. So this guy, Scott Stratton, published a book called QR Codes Kill Kittens. And the idea behind his book was showing all the poor ways that people market these days, how social media and QR codes and Twitter and all this kind of stuff has encouraged bad marketing. And so he's got the book, and boy, if I'd have thought ahead, I'd have brought the book with me, because I got it upstairs. So the book is just full of examples of good, mostly bad marketing. And he killed the place. He knocked it down. He did an outstanding job. He's a great presenter. He is the kind of presenter that I wish I was. He's the kind of presenter that in my head, when I'm practicing in front of the mirror, that's how I look. He just nailed it. He did a great job. But his overriding theme was, if your content is good enough, you shouldn't have to market quite so hard. You shouldn't have to worry about this crazy marketing. I don't completely agree with all that, but I do agree that there should be more focus on content, less on the silly marketing. And he gave 100 great examples of bad marketing. Some of them are just hysterical. One of them was a QR code for a shopping mall. He's from Toronto, so it's up in Canada. And there's so the entrance to the mall, big sign there that's got on the door that says, scan our QR code, blah, blah, blah. But it's outside an automatic door, and it's outside of an automatic door that opens out. So you can't scan the code without getting hit by the door as the door opens. And what's even more funny is, directly adjacent to the scan this code sticker is a sticker that says stand clear. So one sticker says stand here and take a picture of this, and the other one says whatever you do, don't stand here. Just 100 examples of that. It was really great, just hysterical. So I linked the book on Amazon there. I don't know how much it cost. He gave us all copies of it. It is a riot. You absolutely have to check that out. And he gave some examples of good marketing. So one of his examples was, we've all seen the picture on the internet or the video on the internet of the FedEx driver that drives up to the walled-in house and tosses the computer monitor over the wall. And he talks about how never piss off a nerd. Whoever's monitor that was got in there, got that video. And he also mentioned, he's like, you see that FedEx truck in the background with the big FedEx logos? He's like, it looks like a UPS driver backed that thing into the frame. He's like, all right, how's it looking? Perfect. Excellent. So, but that was an example of how FedEx took a bad situation and did something good with it. As soon as that, spread on the internet like wildfire, FedEx, right on their website, said, hey, we saw the video. That was a horrible thing. We've reached out to the customer. We've made that right. We've reached out to the driver. We've killed his family. No, they didn't say that. We've trained him, but they jumped on it. They got ahead of it and actually turned out, took this bad situation and made it better. So that's just a great thing. And like Lynn, so Lynn Dies in the chat room here, she was sitting on the other side of the room. She didn't want to be seen with me that day. But like she said, he was incredibly passionate. I don't agree with everything he said. And he was quite a bit animated and might have dropped the F-bomb a time or two. But it was really good stuff, and it makes you think about marketing a little better. So that was a good time. He did a great job, though. And speaking of Lynn, while I was outside of my element, I did have a few friends there. Lynn Dye, I met her last year at NMX, and she went back this year, so she was gracious enough to hang out with me for most of the thing. We went down to the strip and all that kind of stuff. Virgil Carroll, who's another one of the SharePoint guys, he was there. He was in town for CES and swung by to NMX for a couple days, and of course Justin. So we kind of wandered around and saw stuff together. It was great. We all ended up going to different sessions, so it was good kind of after every session break, getting back together and talking about what other people did, because Lynn went to sessions that I wouldn't have thought of and got some great tips, and it was a good time. So thanks to you three for putting up with me for those days. And it just goes to show that even if you get outside your comfort zone, still going to be good people there. So some thoughts. Now, I know a couple people in the chat room have emailed me because they've thought about going to NMX and kind of wanted my thoughts on it. So again, this is the second year that I've gone, and I don't know if I'll go next year, at least not as an attendee. I might try to pitch them some talks because I can't help myself, but I don't know. So last year, I don't know if it's just because it was fresh to me, but it seemed like the content was more applicable to me. This year, it seemed I had a tough time finding some stuff in certain spots, and I think Lynn had the same problem. The other thing is that it seemed sort of haphazard. Some of the keynotes were announced a couple of days before it started, and a couple of the keynotes weren't announced at all. There were a couple of the bigger ones. I don't think I knew anything about Penn Jillette being there until like the day that I got there. So it kind of felt like it was just flying by the seat of its pants, and that kind of concerned me a little bit. There was also a couple of really silly things, I guess. One of them was conference folks are damned if they do and damned if they don't when it comes to charging for things. So perfect example today, Microsoft blogs that the special event at the SharePoint conference is going to be they're taking over the Las Vegas Speedway, and we're going to have a big party at the Las Vegas Speedway. And that's huge. So a bunch of us were like, oh, that's going to be great, fast cars and all that kind of stuff. But as soon as they released that on Twitter, there was 3 or 4 people that were like, hey, I wonder what percentage of my $2,000 is going towards the Las Vegas Speedway. That always happens. Anytime you put a conference on or do anything, there's always going to be people who are unhappy that they're paying for stuff that they don't like or they're not using. So SharePoint conference, they charge everybody the same and everybody gets into everything, get some complaints. So NMX had a little bit of a different setup where they have different tiers of tags. And they did that last year, but it was a little more obvious because some of the sessions, like there was a couple of days of sessions, and then if you had another tag, there was a couple of days of sessions that you could go to. This year, all the sessions were together, and depending on which pass you had, you could or could not get into rooms. So, and I think Lynn experienced this. She had 2 sessions she wanted to see at a time slot. She went to the first one, and it wasn't any good, so she got out and tried to go next door, and the guy's like, oh, I'm sorry, you got the wrong badge, you can't get in. So I think they could have handled that better. I think they did handle it better last year because all those sessions were on like the last day. So if you had that special badge, if you paid extra, you just stayed an extra day. The other thing is they charge extra for food, which is good and bad. Last year I did not pay for the food, and it wasn't a huge deal. This all took place at the Rio in Las Vegas. There was a couple of restaurants there we could go to. We survived. But this year, I'm like, it would have been nice to have the food there. It was like an extra $100, I forget. We'll do that. So ended up using it one day. But the last day that I was there, I had kind of a frustrating experience. So they had a session that went from 1 to 2, a break from 2 to 2:15, a session that went from 2:15 to 3:15, a break, and then a session at 3:30. So I had stayed in part of a session, the 2:15 session, and got out at like 2:30. And went into, they have like a little break area, which was nice. You could talk to people and all that. And they had some snacks over there. And I'm like, I could go for a snack. And I got this fancy badge that says all access that I get all the food on. So I walk over there, and I guess it was only like 20 after 2. I must have been playing hooky from the 2:15 session. And they had, the rent-a-cop security folks there. And the security guy's like, oh, I'm sorry, you can't get in until 3:30. I'm like, oh, well, that kind of sucks. And then I sat back down and I'm like, wait a second, 3:30? So I actually got back up and went over and asked him again. I said, 3:30? He's like, yeah. So the problem with that was there was a break from 3:15 until 3:30. And then at 3:30, another set of sessions were going to start. And then they were going to open up the snacks. And we're talking, like the coffee and the fruits and that kind of stuff. And it was going to set out there for, an hour so everybody could see it, but you couldn't have it. And then when you went at 3:30 to go to your next session, that's when they opened it up. And I thought that was kind of poor timing. Kind of frustrating because, again, once I saw the bananas and stuff there, I'm like, I would really hit the spot. And then I couldn't have any. So I tweeted the NMX account and said, hey, what's going on with this? Nothing. Didn't say a word. And this was just a few hours after Scott Stratton had his session on here's how you handle marketing, and if people are mad at you, here's how you can fix it. And then the very conference that he said that at wouldn't respond to me. I tweeted him twice, never heard a word from him. But my question was, why are you not giving the snacks from 3:15 to 3:30? And so, just little things like that. It just didn't feel put together well. So it's not an expensive conference. So if you're into that kind of stuff, you might like it. But I don't know if I'm going to go back next year. We'll see. But I did get some good stuff this year. Hopefully some of that stuff will reflect in here. So got a couple of things, but that was my NMX wrap up, and that took a really long time. I apologize. The next thing that I want to talk about, and this was going to be a longer story, but I'm running late. Those of you that have the classy Windows 8 phones, have been going out and downloading my Windows Phone 8 app until last week. So there's been some stuff going around on the web, and I didn't want to really get involved in any of this, but it kind of hit home last week about how Microsoft has taken a proactive stance on defending their trademarks, SharePoint included. So there was kind of some stuff that went around a month or so ago about some people who got Facebook pages and things like that taken down. But last Friday, I got a cease and desist letter from the Windows Phone store telling me that my app had to be pulled because the title of my app, which was Todd Klindt's SharePoint blog, contained a trademark word, Microsoft or SharePoint, and they had gotten a letter from Microsoft's legal department telling them that I had to remove it. If I didn't remove it within 24 hours, they would remove it for me and kill my account. Sad trombone. So I went out and pulled it down immediately, and I wasn't the only one. There was a bunch of people that got hit with that, and it wasn't just SharePoint. There were a bunch of them that had the word Windows and Surface and PowerShell and all that kind of stuff in there. They got pulled down too. But in light of the stuff that happened a month ago and then me getting hit with it now, I have to rename my app, and then there's this process I have to go through where I have to sign a legal document admitting that I infringed on their trademark, and here are the changes that I made and all that. So I got to rename my app, and I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to name it yet, but the effects of that will not just be the app. I think I tried to change it, but I don't think that it took. But if you go into iTunes and search for SharePoint, my Netcast has SharePoint in the title there because that's what I'd called it. Zune is the same way. So there's just going to have to be a mass renaming of everything, and so that's kind of where I'm at right now. And so I'm going to kind of take a little bit of help from you guys. So in the chat room, there's a couple of things. Christina is wondering why they're cracking down on SharePoint. I don't think they're cracking down specifically on SharePoint. Again, when my Windows Phone app got taken out, it wasn't just SharePoint apps. There was, like I said, Windows apps and PowerShell apps. It wasn't a SharePoint specific thing. Doug is asking, why they targeted me. They didn't target me. I suspect all they did was they went into places, Facebook first and then app stores, and just did a search for all of their products and then went on accordingly. So Lynn, Naomi's bringing up an interesting thing. She thinks that LCA, that's Microsoft's legal team, has become sensitive after the SkyDrive debacle. Yeah, maybe, though I don't think that would have helped any. But Lynn says that we should have a contest. I'm kind of with you. So what I'm thinking about, and I'm so I've had some suggestions for what I could change it to. One of them was I could rename it to Todd Klindt's Macro Hard Rhymes with SharePoint Admin Netcast. One of them was Todd Klindt's Lawyers Made Me Change the Name of My Netcast. And while those are both very good ideas and not without merit, I was thinking of something a little less wordy. And so I've kind of been kicking around some ideas. But if you guys out there, anybody within the within the sound of my voice, Doug suggesting Todd Klindt's Metro Netcast, that's interesting. But if you have ideas, by all means, send me an email, todd.klint@rackspace.com. You can hit me up on Twitter. I've got some ideas. So a couple of things in the chat room talking about this. It's easy to get mad at SharePoint about this, or not at SharePoint, at Microsoft about this, but I'm not. And let me be very clear that my grievance is not that they're cracking down on it. It is a trademark term. Nobody disputes that. And legally, if you don't defend trademarks, you become the next Kleenex of product names. So they have to defend their product names. They have to defend SharePoint. They have to defend Windows. They have to defend Surface. They have to. I'm fine with that. I'm not mad about that. But it does make things tough again. So for me, it was because it was in the title. SharePoint can be in the description. Apparently that's okay. Laura Rogers has a Wonder Laura app. Hers did not get hit. It doesn't have SharePoint in the title, but it has SharePoint in the description. That's apparently okay. So again, I'm not mad at Microsoft. I don't think they did a bad thing. For goodness sakes, if anybody at Microsoft listens to this, we all know better than that. I'm not trying to rally the troops or anything. That's not the thing. But what this kind of forced me to do, and it's something I've been thinking about for a while, is over the last 6 months to a year, I've been kind of covering other than just SharePoint. So, I spent a lot of time talking about SharePoint, but I've also been spending some time talking about Windows Phone, and I've been spending some time talking about, Windows 8 and tablets and stuff like that. And everybody that I've talked to about that has not been angry. So like I was talking to Lynn last week, I was talking to some other folks and said, hey, does it offend you that I don't just talk about SharePoint? And none of them had anything bad to say about it. So I think that is probably an okay course to keep going on. I think what with the Rackspace folks paying me every day to play with SharePoint will always be the majority of the topics I talk about. But I'm trying to think of more technically agnostic names. So as you're thinking about names, if you want to submit some to me, and I don't know if this is an official contest because I don't know what the prize is going to be and I don't know what the deadline is going to be, but if you suggest a name and I take it, I'll give you full props. I'll figure something out. But one thing that I will want is it'll have to have my name in it so that people can find it. And the other thing is, obviously can't have any trademarked names in it. I also don't want I don't want the word podcast or netcast in it. One of the things that happens in NMX is they have these podcasting awards, and they have, 10 podcasts per category, and there's 20 some categories. And the guy that was emceeing it was supposed to be Dr. Drew, but he got stuck because of weather in New York City. But it was a guy that I'd never heard of before, David H. Lawrence, the 17th or something like that. I guess he was on Heroes. I kind of recognized him. Was not so excited about him emceeing this until he got up there. He did a phenomenal job. It was amazing how good he did. But one of the things that he did is he was reading off one of the categories. It was like, Fred's podcast, Jim's podcast, Larry's podcast about cars. And he stopped about halfway through and he's like, haven't we gotten to the point where podcasts don't have to have the word podcast in them anymore? And I thought, that's a good idea. So I guess as I'm personally trying to think of how I'm going to rename the podcast and my blog and my app and all that kind of stuff, I want to have my name in it so that people can find it. and then I don't want the name podcast or the word podcast or netcast or any of that stuff in it. So we're getting some great ideas here in the chat room. Mark Chrisman, you get a point for this one. Todd Klindt's great hair. I think we can all agree that that's good. Chris Gibbons, Todd.0. I like that. I suspect a different army of lawyers would come after me. Though honestly, does Comedy Central have enough money for lawyers? That one might be safe. I might be able to steal that one. I could do a SharePoint redemption at the end. You know, I could make fun of somebody's SharePoint farm and then bring them on, have them defend what they did. Todd Klindt's sweet netcast. Tim, honestly, that there was some. I had some ideas like that. So. Doug's looking at his watch. Todd Klindt's never-ending Jabberwocky. So those are some ideas. Again, I can't have any trademark names, and it's probably not a bad thing. But if you've got those ideas, and hopefully I got this chat log down. But in a couple of weeks, again, I'm going to talk to Justin and kind of get some ideas. But I guess one thing about all this is I'm not mad. I'm not bitter. There's been a bunch of people pissing and moaning about it in social media. I'm not that guy. I'm not mad. They're not doing anything wrong. Their execution could maybe be a little less prickly, but it's okay. It's not a big deal. But I do need to figure out something else. So get a hold of me. Again, todd.klint@rackspace.com, at Todd Klindt on Twitter. I'm pointing at TweetDeck. You can't really see. But that's going on now. All right, boy, am I running late. So another big thing going on. I've talked about this a bunch. A week from tomorrow, so on the 21st. My cat just knocked some stuff off my desk. You're a terrible co-host. You're horrible. A week from tomorrow, on the 21st, I turn 40. Happy birthday to me. And the Netcast Hooligans, since my very first birthday, after my very first Netcast started, so I started this thing in March of 2009. In January 2010, Dan Usher and Lori Gowan headed up the charge to donate to collect some money donated to charity in my name. An outstanding thing. I'm a big fan. I've encouraged that every year. They're doing it up big this year since this is my 40th, and I half expect the lights in the room to flicker and go off. Who knows what Knucklehead's doing over there? So Lori is heading up another big drive, and she had one goal in mind, a number that she wanted to collect, and she said you guys blew through it in like a week. So she's got another number, and we're getting close. She's got a couple of days till everybody can get signed, but she wants to. She's got the second number she wants to hit, and I want her to hit it. I don't know what any of these numbers are yet. It doesn't really matter to me. It just matters that people are doing something. So if you would like to help out, and you will not be donating money to me, unfortunately, but Lori has picked I gave her a list of charities that I personally donate to. She's picked one of those or more than one. I don't know about all that. But if you email her at gowanl@bellsouth.net, that's GOWINL @bellsouth.net. Tell her you want to be involved, and she'll tell you what the steps are. I've already gotten a couple of cards from folks. I haven't sent anything back yet. I kind of wanted to do it all at once. But everybody who's involved will get a personal whatever from me. I'll call you on the phone, do whatever. But to kind of get past that hump, I decided tonight, and I kind of chatted with Lori a little bit before I went on air, I'm going to print up some kind of t-shirts or something. I'm going to give a little something back to everybody who is donating. So if you have already donated, you'll get a t-shirt of some sort. And this idea is about 90 minutes old, so I don't have a lot of details on it. But with that, and if you haven't donated anything, email Lori, gowanl @bellsouth.net, and tell her you want to get involved, and you'll get a t-shirt too. Don't know what's going to say on it, don't know what it's going to do, but I'm just trying to grease those wheels a little bit. This is an amazing thing that you guys have done. Every year you guys have done it, and every year it's been pretty cool. So yes, like Mark said in the chat room, big thanks to Lori for putting it all together. Doug, yeah, Netcast Hooligan t-shirts of some sort, but something that says, I gave till it hurt or something, I don't know. But a big thanks to that, and thanks to Dan Usher. He was one of the driving forces on this. All right, so I had a couple of things, but I will save them for next week because I've held you guys way too long for one night. Plus, I got to see how my Cyclones are doing. So now we will go to the final chapter in tonight's Netcast, the shameless self-promotions portion. So not a lot of changes here since the last Netcast. I'm doing the SharePoint conference. You can go to SharePointconference.com, find out about that. I'm doing a pre-conference session on Sunday, March 2nd. It's going to be all day. You get to soak up all of this, the good hair and everything, all day long, Shane and I. And we're going to be installing and configuring SharePoint and just kind of answering every question that you have about getting it set up, getting it configured, why you do it the way that you do it, all that kind of stuff. So that'll be all day, and then we're doing 3 more sessions during the SharePoint conference. We're doing one on load testing SharePoint using Visual Studio. We're doing one on upgrading to SharePoint 2013, and one on using Windows PowerShell with SharePoint 2013 and SharePoint Online. So that's SharePointConference.com. The conference proper is March 3rd through the 6th. Our pre-con is March 2nd. And I'm going to be doing, so that's going to be over a Monday night. The 3rd is a Monday. I will be doing the Netcast live at the SharePoint conference, at the SharePoint TV thing at some point. So I don't have all the details about that yet. I've been working with them. We just kind of got to get the schedule down. So pay attention to that. I'll try to get you all together. We'll have some kind of a meetup. People in the chat room have been talking about getting shirts for that. I don't know how many T-shirts you guys want me to buy, but we'll think of something. We'll do that. But pay attention to that, and I'll get that as soon as I get that information nailed down. I'll get that out to you. The next month is SP TechCon, and if you go to sptechcon.com, you can find out about that. That is April 22nd through the 25th, and that is in San Francisco. I will also do a Netcast there, and don't have all the details on that either, but we will be doing something there. We've done that the last 2 or 3. Always a good time. And then finally in May, TechEd North America is in Houston, lovely Houston, vacation destination of the stars, Houston, Texas. We'll be doing some sessions there. Don't know what the full sessions are going to be, but we'll be doing a pre-con for sure. Same one we're doing the SharePoint conference. So one of the things that came up, and I didn't address it in the New Media Expo thing, is Leo Laporte was there again. And I did stop and talk to him. He wasn't feeling very well. I talked to him a couple minutes. But I'm going to try to get up to Petaluma, where all of his Twit stuff is at. I'm going to try to get up there while I'm in San Francisco in April. And so I'm going to try to wedge my way into Windows Weekly again this year. Last year, I got on Windows Weekly, and that was time of my life. Couldn't be happier. And so I'm going to try to do that again. Talk to him a little bit about it, and he seemed agreeable to it. So we'll see what we can do. No guarantees, no promises, but we'll see. So thanks, everybody. This went horribly over. I apologize. You guys were all chatty in the chat room, and I was all chatty and all of that. Once again, I'm a friendly guy. I'm easy to talk to. If you want to email me, you can do that at todd.klindt@rackspace.com. I'm on Twitter at toddklindt, and hit me up there. And I will see you next week. I promise there'll be more technical stuff. But thanks for sticking with me, and I'll see you next week.